Hello, everybody. My name's James. We did promise you a People's Poll podcast this week, but I changed my mind after watching the Lionesses on Wednesday morning. I'm delighted to say Lauren Harris is back to join me for a preview at the Women's World Cup final. And the ladies are in it. Lauren, how are we feeling?
Buzzing, absolutely buzzing. I think when we did this podcast before the start of the World Cup, I was cautious in my predictions. Obviously, terrible prediction in Brazil, winning the whole thing and not getting past the group stages. But England have surpassed my expectations throughout the tournament with everything that happened in the build-up with injuries and so on, and losing to Australia and full not being great. The fact that we've got to the World Cup final, I think, is an outstanding achievement, regardless of what happens on Sunday. So, yeah, really excited and getting nervous now.
I know you're on holiday at the moment, so thank you even more so for joining us. You're back in time for the final. But how much of the tournament have you been able to see in terms of other teams and other nations?
So the first week or so, I was working, and obviously it was morning kickoff, so it was a case of catching like half hour here and there before I started work, and then catching up on highlights. And then for the last group stage games and all of the knockouts, I've been able to watch every single game.
Nice.
Got up at 2 a.m. to watch Spain Netherlands, which was really tense game. Netherlands could have easily gone through, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, it's been a really pleasing World Cup in terms of, we were talking before about USA maybe scoring double figures against Vietnam, and some of the bigger nations probably finding it easy against the small nations who are making their debuts, and how competitive it was really pleasing. And I think it's been a World Cup of the underdog, really.
Yeah, I mean, from
England.
what I've seen, I think quality level's gone up again a notch, both technically and tactically. I think particularly as well. And as you said, the real concern with the expansion of the tournament and more teams being involved, there was a concern that a few might get completely overwhelmed. But it kind of leads on to England's journey. And we were saying, well, it's 4-0 against Haiti, acceptable. And I don't know about you, but I was kind of like quite relieved to get away with a 1-0 in the end. And that was a concerning opener for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Haiti were a really physically strong and quick team, and I think that they were fitter than us, and they were able to use that to their advantage. They made it really difficult for us, and I think also we were probably lacking a little bit of confidence from our build up to the World Cup, and yeah, after that, I probably wasn't as if you'd have said before the game and we were saying, oh, 4-0, is that enough? I probably wasn't as worried as you'd think you would be, only winning 1-0, because I think you saw from Haiti that actually we probably hadn't given them the respect that they deserved in terms of what we were expecting from that game. But I think that was the start of what's been, for the Lionesses, a tournament where they've just been able to find that little bit extra where they've needed to. In whatever scenario they've been thrown, they've been able to get over the line. But yeah, Haiti was a tense start. And I have to say, if you'd asked me after that game, will we get to the World Cup final, I probably would have said no. So
yeah, we'd had a conversation when you joined me a month or so ago and said, do we have to reflect on last summer and go, is it partially because we were at home? And then you were literally on the other side of the world and looking at this and thinking, if we'd have come up with against a really good experienced team today, we'd have got beat. And that causes alarm going forward. That alarm increased during the Denmark game with the injury to Keira Walsh, and which I love her. I just think she's so instrumental to what England do. And I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, you've now taken possibly the most key component out of this team out. We thought it was an ACL injury again when it happened. Fortunately, it wasn't. But after that victory of Denmark and the injury to Keira Walsh, it inspired a change of system, which almost feels like the tournament started for England with the China game, basically.
Yeah, and that when Walsh got injured, I remember saying to a couple of my friends who maybe don't follow the England team as much, and they said, "Oh, she's quite a good player, isn't she?" And my response was, "Yeah, I think that's World Cup over. I don't think we can recover from this." Because the Denmark game started so positively. I thought we were playing so well. Lauren James obviously got the opener. Walsh got injured, and then it kind of fizzled out. And we held on towards the end. Denmark hit the post, and that game could have easily gone a little bit different. So yeah, the mood after that game was definitely, what are we going to do without Walsh? But then obviously the positive news came that it wasn't the ACL, and I have to say I did not expect her to be back in the tournament. The speed at which she returned was, good for the England camp to keep that under wraps, because they were very tight-lipped, weren't they, about, yeah, she's staying with the squad, but they didn't give anything away as to how serious it was. And then obviously, yeah, the change in formation, the China game blew me away really, and obviously then all the hope comes back, and it's coming home sort of comes back there, in your mind. Yeah.
Having had the 2-1 nils and then the 6-1 against China, which included this switch of system, which, I mean, had Sarina Wiegman played a back three with England before?
No, and if you'd have said to me that Jess Carter would start almost every game, I would have been very nervous. And I think at the start, because she started at centre back in the Haiti game, and I wasn't too impressed with her performance, but from the China game onwards, defensively, she's been really good. She's not the best at playing out from the back, but I think having those three at the back just gives that little bit more coverage and protection, because Bronze and Daly do love to go forwards, whether that is the back four or a back 3 or 5. Having that extra centre back has really helped to protect the back line. And Alex Greenwood is one of 2 players, I think, for England that has been player of the tournament. She's been outstanding. I don't think she's put a foot wrong. In the Colombia game, she kept coming out and winning the ball and taking away that pressure when Colombia were kind of coming at us, and I just think she's been really dependable. And Millie Bright, she's not done much wrong, but I just think Greenwood's been outstanding. And I said after the China game, you have to give Sarina credit, because when I saw the lineup and I saw that it was a 3 at the back, I was dubious. And I think we've learned now to not question Sarina. She knows what she's doing.
I'm not even sure we knew it was a back 3 when we saw it, because Rachel Daly could obviously played up front, left back, left wing back. Was it going to be Greenwood perhaps move to left back, for example? We didn't really know. It was just out of interest. Who would be the other player that's impressed you most for England?
Lauren Hemp. I just think last year, I remember speaking to you last year before the Euros and saying, oh, Lauren Hemp's a great talent. She's done really well in the WSL. And obviously we won the Euros, but I don't think her individual performances were as good as she can be. And I think in this tournament, she really has shown that. And she got player of the match in the semi-final the other day. I think she could be up for player of the tournament if we win it. Bonmati of Spain is probably just ahead of her, and if they win, then I think she 100% will win player of the tournament. But yeah, I think she's had a great tournament as well, Lauren Hemp.
So part of this switcher system obviously got Lauren James into the team, and I think blew a lot of people away in terms of how well she played in that game against China. Fast forward to the last 16 game against Nigeria, we're struggling. We're not playing our best. She has what we can only call a David Beckham-esque moment, unfortunately, because my feeling is always, if you're going to do something like that, at least do it properly. It was a moment of petulance, which I'm sure she massively regrets. What's going through your mind at that moment when James gets sent off?
I thought we'd blown it. I mean, it was very late, wasn't it? It was the 87th minute. So I think that helped that it was so close to extra time, and you think, okay, just get to extra time, and then we have to try and hold on for penalties. I don't think there was any way we were going to break them down with 10 players. And I think, again, it goes back to they've found a way in those really difficult moments. They went to a 4-4-1. They kept it really tight at the back. Nigeria obviously had most of the possession in that extra time, and it was horrible to watch as an England fan because you're just waiting for that goal to go in. But as soon as extra time finished, I had confidence that we'd win on penalties. I think playing against Brazil.
You as an English person had confidence in penalties.
Well,
that idea that, and we're waiting for an England team to go to penalties, and that's what we got our fingers crossed for. It's a little bit alien, particularly when Georgia Stanway missed the first. And I'm thinking, I've seen this before.
Yeah, but then the Nigerian one was like a carbon copy, wasn't it? Same side, same miss. I just think that experience that they had in the finalissima against Brazil would have really helped them. And we do have great penalty takers. You know, Georgia Stanway missed, but she is the lead penalty taker. Everyone else scores their penalties, and they were all good penalties. Chloe Kelly's obviously has kind of got a bit viral. Hers was
brilliant,
amazing. And I think, again, if Sunday were to go to a penalty shootout, which would be horrible, awful, but if it did, then I think, again, that we've kind of got the psychological edge there. And some of the Spanish players are inexperienced. Their goalkeeper is the backup goalkeeper to Barcelona, because the first team goalkeeper is obviously not there for reasons we'll discuss later. They've got, they have got a few younger players in that squad who maybe haven't had that experience. England now have got to a European final. They've won a penalty shootout at this tournament. They've gone through those difficult moments. I think psychologically we're really strong as a team, and I think that's carried us through so far. Hopefully on Sunday, take us all the way.
We've had traits of memories. I think of stuff that's happened to the men's team, which I think that naturally some of us think of the Beckham moment in '98, and also in the quarterfinal. I'm sure most of us had a David Seaman fault when the ball sailed over Mary Earp's head. And she didn't have much of a chance of it. But again, faced with adversity, 1-0 down against a Colombia team that had already really surprised in the group stage and shown their quality. But England came through it again.
Yeah, and I was actually on the plane for the first half of that game out on holiday. And when we landed, it was 0-0. We were listening on the radio, and then you just heard the commentary of that Colombia had scored, and on the radio they were suggesting that it was Mary Earps' fault. And then I think, like you say, when we watch the highlights, you see the goal back. There's not too much she could have done, but she is susceptible to getting lobbed, as you saw with Sam Kerr, which was an amazing goal. But Sam Kerr has lobbed her a few times in the WSL, so that's perhaps a weakness of Earps. But again, the team came back, got lucky with the equaliser. Obviously, their goalkeepers fumbled it, and Lauren Hemp's, on the ball to knock it in. But Russo's winning goal was great finish in a really kind of high pressurised moment. She's still a young player, but again, having that experience last year, the back heel against Sweden, she's done it in those big games, and to have the composure to go through and go and do that, score that goal and get us into the semi-final was brilliant. And again, it shows we've come through another test. That was, you didn't have Lauren James. Bringing Ella Toone back in the starting lineup, she hasn't had the best form. How will she do? Will we miss Lauren James? I think Ella Toone has come in and performed brilliantly, and is now giving Sarina a bit of a headache for the final as to what she does.
Yeah, when Russo goes through, she does give you the feeling like she's going to score. Like that's how it felt for the final goal in the semi-final as well. Fancy her here, she'll finish this. The semi-final, of course, I'd mentioned earlier about, was it partly because we were at home last year that might have helped carry us home? We then obviously faced with a complete opposite situation for the semi. Did you go into the game thinking that we would win?
I went into the game expecting to lose as a
pessimistic English fan.
Okay, well, if I expect to lose, then maybe it won't feel as bad if we do lose. On paper, our team is much better than the Australian team. Before kickoff, Alana Kennedy not playing and Polkinghorne coming in was a big lift for me, because she is nowhere near as good at centre back. She's not got the same experience, and so I felt like that was a positive. for us. Obviously, Sam Kerr was starting, but we expected her to start. And although she scored that amazing goal, I think other than that, we generally did well to minimise her risk. Millie Bright, Jess Carter, obviously both play with her at Chelsea, so they know all about what her game is. But before the game, I would have said we should win, but that home advantage, as you say, can play a part. And I think when Australia equalised, we were under the cosh, and at that point, I did fear because the crowd massively got up, and then momentum could easily swing in your way. But again, the girls found a way to get through, and Lauren Hemp obviously puts us back ahead and silences the crowd. Really, I think once we scored again, Australia, probably realised, okay, this is maybe a step too far.
Yeah, anybody in the office who wasn't watching the game or wasn't aware what was going on certainly knew when both the second and third goals went in, because I may have slightly informed them that England had gone in front, and then football was coming home then when the third went in. I agree with you. When Kerr equalised, I thought, yeah, the momentum here could be a real problem, particularly in the sort of 5-10 minutes or so afterwards. And it did take England a little bit of time to wrestle it back. There is a little fortuitous element towards the second goal, but Hemp finishes it amazingly. From there, I was very comfortable. Even when you see the board go up for the added time at 3-1 up, absolute complete trust in them. I was just pick up on Earps, obviously conceding. It was a great goal by Kerr. Actually, I thought she was mad unlucky on that goal because she reads the shot instantly, actually, and it did take a little nick. Because it took a little nick, she repositioned and planted her feet and then had to react again. And I think that's why she got done over on the goal. Otherwise, I think the original one, she might have got nearer because she was ready to go and read the deflection, then had to pause and then go again, because it almost felt like the shot was at a closer distance because of the slight deflection on it. I think she's great in the goal, by the way. Generally,
she is, and there's no doubt that she is. She should be England's number one. I mean, Ellie Roebuck is very unfortunate that Earps is so good, because Roebuck is another phenomenal goalkeeper, and we're very lucky that we've got both of them. It's just Kerr in the WSL. I've seen Kerr do that against Earps, and before the game, I said, I bet Kerr's going to score, and I bet it's going to be a ball over Earps' head, but that's all she could do, and we came through.
Yes, and now it's Spain in the final. We've had their own interesting journey. I can't think of many teams that have reached the World Cup final and lost 4-0 in the group stage. That is what happens to them against Japan, although Japan had about 25% possession.
Spain, I think it's 22%.
22. Yeah. Spain clearly the best team we're going to have played. And do they deserve mass credit for coming through, essentially, we have to admit, on the more difficult side of the draw?
Yeah, they, without doubt, will be the hardest team we've played. When we were at the group stage, sort of getting towards the last match of the group stages, it really looked like our side of the draw was going to be the more difficult one. France, Germany, possibly Brazil. There were lots of strong teams on our side of the draw. But as the tournament progressed, Sweden did really well last year at the Euros, but I think Sweden stepped up a level throughout the tournament. We'll talk about the Spain game, but they stepped up a level throughout the tournament. Obviously knocked out the USA, who were below par in the group stages, and I don't think it was really a surprise when they got knocked out. It was a shock. It was a worldwide shock that the two-time World Cup winners going for 3 in a row got knocked out. But having watched their performances, it wasn't really a surprise. I went into that game expecting Sweden to win. Japan, I thought, were phenomenal. And again, I thought that was a shock, them going out to Sweden. Although Sweden had played well up to that point, their 4-0 win against Spain, their performances in general, they looked unstoppable, Japan. And yeah, Sweden obviously managed to get through that. The Netherlands, I think, massively missed Miedema in that quarterfinal against Spain. The Netherlands had some good chances and they just didn't have the quality to finish them. And if Miedema was in that Netherlands team, then on another day, perhaps they go through and not Spain. But Spain's attacking talent and the way that they play is suffocating. They are going to have more possession. They've had more possession in every single game during the World Cup. I think the least possession they've had was 64%. As you say, 78 possession against Japan, and they lose 4-0. So that they love being on the ball. They love creating. But I think what we've seen in this tournament is that they will concede goals. I think it's 7 goals since the Japan game, or including the Japan game. Obviously, they didn't concede against Costa Rica and Zambia, but if you look at every game since, they've conceded in every single game. And I think they've given up chances in every single game that possibly against England we may score. So I think you've got an attack that is really dangerous and world class, and you've got the best players in the world. Bonmati, Mateus perhaps isn't quite at her best form yet, but we know what she can do. You've got some really young talent in Redondo and Paraloeo who have both scored some really key goals from this tournament. And yeah, that is quite scary. But on the other side of it, Kadina at centre back is not, I mean, she's good, but she's not, that's not their best starting back four. Mapi Leon obviously isn't at the tournament, world-class centre back who Spain are missing. Played against us in the Euros last year. She's not there. So that's, a positive for us, something that we can maybe look to exploit. As we said, their goalkeeper she's young, she's 23, she's inexperienced. She's the second goalkeeper at Barcelona. She's not playing week in, week out. And she's been obviously done quite well at the tournament. But again, a World Cup final is a whole different ball game. So I think Spain have been brilliant, bar the Japan game. They can score from anything. They've got such a strong attack, but we definitely have positives and things that I think we can look to exploit them with.
Yeah, I mean, would it be fair to say that we're arguably been the best defensive side in the tournament? Are we the strongest, maybe? To put it a different way?
I'd say Sweden up to the semi-final had done really well defensively. And until Colombia and Australia, we hadn't conceded a goal in open play. And I think both those goals that we have conceded are quite similar goals, aren't they, really? They've both come from similar
Long
situations.
distance goals. So we haven't been opened up in sense, if you will.
No, and Spain can score those kind of goals. They have scored those goals already in this tournament, but with Spain, I think if we can stay tight defensively, we will almost force them into shooting from distance, because I think they'll get frustrated. If we can keep tight and not allow them in, then we can hopefully force that frustrated.
Yeah, it feels like we'll need to be clinical with our moments. I think they'll go 4-3-3. Is that fair to say, Lauren?
Yeah.
And I take it we stick with this back three now, I presume. And I guess the big debate at this stage is, will Lauren James, suspension over, start?
Yeah, Toone versus James is the big headache for Sarina, I think. And I'm a bit on the fence with it, in that Lauren James is an outstanding talent. And I think, you could argue that she is so good and so unique in what she does that you have to start her, because she can create something out of nothing for us. But Ella Toone has played in the quarterfinal and the semi-final, performed brilliantly in both games. Obviously has scored that goal in the semi to kind of get us to the final. I don't know if you've heard the stat that she's the first English player, male, female, to score. Yeah.
So big moment, she's there, right?
Exactly. So I think whatever decision Sarina makes, I don't think you can argue it. And I think Lauren James should start in terms of who's going to be the better player. But I think you couldn't argue against Toone starting, with the circumstances around why James hasn't been playing and how Toone has performed. Kind of, she's stepped up to the plate when she's been asked to.
I think there's any chance they could both start. Is there any possibility
I
of
don't,
that? And taking one of the, I guess it would be Russo would come out, would it? Maybe.
I can't
No,
see
I
her
can't
dropping
see that either.
Russo. I don't can't see her dropping Russo or Hemp because they're both in great form,
Yeah.
and I think Georgia Stanway is too important in what she does to take her out. Keira Walsh is obviously untouchable unless she's injured. She's going to start every game. So no, I think it is Toone versus James, and I think it's a really difficult decision for Sarina to make.
I just think from the bits I know of Sarina that she's quite ruthless with her decision making. I think it does make me think that she'll pick James.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's a nice headache to have. It's not I'm
definitely.
petrified about who's going to play right back or something like that. It's a nice headache to have. And if James is a substitute, what a player to bring on. And
Exactly.
there's every chance this goes to 120 minutes, right? Or
Yeah,
130 or 140, just depending on legislation that FIFA decide for the final.
yeah,
So
and
there's that side of it as well, that it could be a long game.
exactly. And I think either of them, Toone or James, whoever you've got, that's a positive to bring on. And obviously Chloe Kelly, who has come on, she has had a bit of she's not had the leading role perhaps in this tournament, in that she's not been starting every game. But like the Euros, she's coming on and doing what is needed and performing well in those big moments. Obviously scored against China, which maybe wasn't, the game was done, but the penalty against Nigeria in that moment, in that pressurized situation, she's still a young player to do that with such
She took the penalty
coolness and
like we'd have all
calm.
took it. Just get in, smash it. But with
Just a little
accuracy, she
hop
had a lot
as
more
well for
accuracy than the
pace
rest of us would have had. And I thought Rachel
and
Davies'
power.
penalty was great as well, by the way.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, she takes pens for Villa, and that's kind of a centre forwards finish, wasn't it? That you'd expect, not from a left back, but there you
We
go.
also just acknowledged that Chloe Kelly in the semi-final got one of the greatest yellow cards of all time, for her time wasting antic when she brought the ball was out of play and ran the ball back onto play. It was Chloe Kelly that got booked for that, wasn't it?
Possibly, but I was probably about 4 drinks deep by that point, so I can't
Hey,
actually remember what you're talking about.
I'm sure it was. Do you know what it was? It was the doubt on your face. I'm thinking, am I talking absolute
No.
rubbish here? No, it was Chloe Kelly, 95th minute.
Okay.
Yeah. The ball was out of play. It ran out for a goal kick, and she was like, "No, I'm just gonna." Australia was trying to take a goal kick, and she just ran back on the pitch with the ball. She knew what was coming, kept going. I think she was getting booked, and she was still running with the ball.
I mean, I was saying when the injury time went up, I was saying to people in the pub, like, we did this in the Euro final against Germany, when I can remember in the Euro final,
I keep the
them
ball.
keeping it in the corner. They
Yeah.
managed the game so well. I said, we just need to do that. Just keep the ball, waste time, do whatever we need to do. Just
Yeah, I think
keep it in their
it's a
half.
great credit to this team. I think it's streetwise. Even
Mm.
like you said, the way they compacted the game against Nigeria and accepted the situation they were in, exactly that. The final where we were playing against a really good, experienced team in Germany, and there's 10 minutes of extra time where they can't get in our half because we're
Yeah.
just running the clock and keeping the ball so well. And it was in the right hand corner for about 5 minutes, wasn't it? Throwing after
Mm-hmm.
throwing after throwing. So I think they're streetwise, and I think that really helps. Exactly what you said. The experience that they carry into this final is stronger than the Spain side, which we first spoke about a couple of years ago when you joined me for a Euros preview on Patreon, or last year rather. And you'd said then about they didn't really have the experience. A lot of people are tipping them up because Barca have done really well. They're doing well at club level, and they're really good players, but they hadn't really done anything on the international stage. Now they've achieved reaching the final, but we should acknowledge there's a story in the background here with Spain, which certainly calls into question. I don't want to say the legitimacy of what they've done, but it's fair to say that Spain should probably have an even stronger team out on the pitch than they will do on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, there's four what I'd call world-class players from the Barcelona team missing, not at the World Cup, currently in pre-season with their club watching on, who I think you have to feel sorry for, because they would 100% be starting. They would be there. They'd be they'd be experiencing it as the other girls are. So yeah, so there's, do you want me to talk? Should I run
Yeah,
through the kind
go
of,
for it. Go for
yeah.
it.
so Jorge Vilda, the manager, is he's been part of the Spanish setup since his playing career kind of didn't get off the ground. He played at youth level and then he didn't have a professional career. He went to manage the under-15s, under-17s, under-19 Spanish team. His dad is part of the federation, and he was then given the women's team job. And a lot of people, when he was appointed, didn't agree with his appointment in that he didn't have the experience. He perhaps, he wasn't fit to lead a women's team because this was his first sort of managerial experience. He's only 42 now, and so when you think, I think it was maybe 10 or so years ago that he started managing. He's a young manager, and he's never managed anyone but the Spanish youth women girls teams, and now the Spanish women's team. And I think, just to come back to England, I think England appointing Sarina Wiegman, who is now in her 4th successive final.
Amazing.
She's been there and done it in the women's game, and she's got experience. And I'm not someone who thinks that men can't manage women's teams, but I think they can't use women's football as a stepping stone for their own careers. So Phil Neville is a prime example of, you've seen he went to Inter Miami, he's been sacked. He's clearly not, an amazing manager, but he was given the England job as his first kind of taste of managing a team, when really that's not where we should be. And I think hopefully we will get to that point where it won't be where we are. But that's where the Spanish team are. And it's not just that he's inexperienced, there's a whole magnitude of other things around it. And it's important to say that we don't know many of the facts. We know that 15 of the players wrote to the Spanish FA after the Euros last year. Apparently, before they wrote to the FA, they had a conversation with Vilda and with the president, basically expressing that they weren't happy with the conditions of training. A lot of them felt that when they went back to their clubs, their physical conditions had regressed because of the quality of training that they were getting whilst on international duty. The Spanish team have only just hired a nutritionist for their camps, which, when you think about the level that they're playing at, is mind-blowing. Jorge Vilda has been described as a bit of a dictator, which people have different management styles, but there's kind of rumours about the fact that he controlled their bedrooms, so they weren't allowed to lock their bedroom doors until he'd been in and checked it. If they went shopping, he'd have to check what they'd bought when they went shopping.
That is scandalous.
All things,
if that's correct.
There's a clear power struggle there. And I think a lot of the 15 players that wrote the letter back in, I think it was September, October last year, they were all from Barcelona, Man City, Man United, and other Spanish teams. And there is a feeling that the players from Real Madrid were bullied into not joining in writing those letters by the club, because I think there's a lot of politics with Real Madrid in Spain and the Spanish FA. And if you look at the list of players that wrote those letters, none of them came from Madrid. Bonmati refused to shake the hand of the Real Madrid goalkeeper in one of their fixtures this season, which it has been cited as possibly to do with the ongoing dispute. When Barcelona won I think it's their version of the Super Cup, Community Shield, possibly. Yeah. It's tradition that the Spanish FA come down and hand out the medals, and they didn't come down and hand out the medals. The Barcelona players had to go and grab their own medals because of this ongoing dispute.
This is now, so that's nothing to do with COVID in the past, right? This is
no, that was January this year. Oh. Yeah. The Spanish FA also came under criticism for the Super Cup because they held theirs in Saudi Arabia, the men's in Saudi Arabia. But the women's one, basically, the men's had all these fireworks and all this, all this bravado around it, and the women's was just sort of left to the wayside. And I think the feeling is in Spain, in women's football, that the Spanish FA don't value women's football as much as they should. Jorge Vilda's dad works for the Spanish FA, and maybe that's part of the reason that he's kept the job. And I think there's just, there's a little bit of salt in the wounds for obviously those players that haven't gone. 3 of the 15 are there: Honor, Battier, Bonmati, and it's gone out of my head who the other player is.
They've essentially, it feels like from the outside, from a little I know, they've made a choice that like they don't want to play for Vilda, but they also don't want to miss a Women's World Cup. And it's kind of heartbreaking to be in the middle of your principal, and also this comes around once every 4 years. You probably got maximum 3 shots at it, maybe 2. What do you want to do?
Yeah, and they're such talented players, that the vast majority of, or a huge number of that Spanish squad won the Champions League this year. They are at the top of the game, and for them to, some of them aren't there, but the ones that are there, you can absolutely understand why they've decided to go. And I think those players are in a really difficult situation in that. I think now, regardless, if they win or they lose on Sunday, Jorge Vilda and the Spanish FA will feel vindicated in that, he should be manager, and I think he will continue to be manager now. And those players, you've probably seen the videos of them. No one celebrates with him. There's never any celebration with the manager. They're all celebrating with themselves, and hopefully, if they win on Sunday, they will be able to take the plaudits that they deserve. Because my fear is that if they win on Sunday, it will be all about Vilda, and it will be about how he has taken the Spanish team, when actually, the players have been successful in spite of all that's been going on and all of those conditions.
There is no. I think you're 100% right, and you've explained that really well. The only thing I'd add is that there might be a little bit of a counter argument in the sense that if Spain do win, that the Football Association there may see the value in what the women's team brings. If it wins, and it may therefore, in a weird way, it almost feels like the reports are like they're playing for themselves and their country, obviously, which I completely get, but it might be playing for the future of girls playing Spanish football as well, that it could have a really positive impact for them if they win. Because I think the easy narrative is definitely to say, right, this is disgusting that the manager's going to get all the praise here, because I think most people like me and you would get past that and go, yeah, they've got amazing talent, and hopefully it improves the standards and the resources for Spanish girls going forward. Yeah,
and I think, it's like we've said this before, it's crazy that it's taken this long for them to get to a major final with the quality that they've got. The Spanish league, maybe the other teams in the Spanish league hasn't been as competitive, but Barcelona as a force in European football for some years now, they've kind of been gradually growing and growing, but they've been phenomenal. And yeah, hopefully, as you say, it will boost funding and revenue, and if they win the World Cup, things like having a nutritionist become normal in the women's setup. But I think it comes back to people's perceptions of women's football, and I think whichever team win, hopefully it will have that impact in that country on the future of women's football.
Brilliant. Lauren, thank you so much for your time. Is it coming home?
I'm going to say no, because I have not backed England. I've not backed England in any of these podcasts, and it's always worked out well. So I'm going to say no, but yes.
Give us a correct score prediction.
I'm going to say 1-1. England to win on penalties.
So it's not coming home, but it is coming home. Right, I got it. I know where you've gone there, Lauren. I hope it's coming home. I wish the Lionesses all the best. I'd like to add as well that I feel exactly how I felt last year, that these girls are identifiable, they're relatable, and they're likable. And it's a pleasure to support them and look forward to the final on on Sunday. Are we getting a bank holiday if we win? Do we know? I've heard this
No,
mentioned.
they've said no. Government have said
Oh,
no. None of the royal
useless.
family or Rishi or any, no one's flying out for the final, which is maybe a conversation for another day. But
But
yeah,
presumably, obviously, if they do win, I guess because of where they are, it's not going to be the next day, obviously. But I presume next weekend or something, there'll be some mass celebrations or something, surely.
yeah. Well, I'm actually going to up north to visit my granny in Yorkshire, so I'm really hoping that if we win and there's a open top, bus tour, it's at the weekend. They've got to do it at the weekend so that everyone can attend, obviously. So,
Also, it's bank holiday weekend next weekend, isn't it? So maybe even the
yeah,
bank holiday Monday, maybe, possibly.
yeah,
Anyway, we're obviously clearly getting ahead of
yes,
ourselves
no,
because I think our most difficult game is to come, and Spain are a very, very good football team. The bookies have it as a coin flip, basically, which I think tells me that possibly Spain are slight favourites because there'll be
yeah,
weight of money coming for England. So I think it's probably a 55-45 where Spain are probably slight favourites, I think. But our girls are definitely capable of winning this. And every time they hit a bit of adversity, they seem to get over it.
yeah. I believe in Sarina, believe in the girls. I'm sure we can do it. The only thing is that the referee is the American that we had on Wednesday, and I thought she was terrible and
That's
biased. But
very unusual.
mm.
Unusual to have a referee do a semi-final and a final.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought Stephanie Frappart would have done it, but she did the 2019 final, so maybe they want someone different. But
Okay,
there we go.
that's interesting. Yeah, I can get that, not having the same person do the final in four consecutive World Cups, if you will.
Mm.
I almost hate to ask, but because you've obviously mentioned how well Sarina's done, and for those who don't know, like this remarkable achievement of Euro final. She did win it in 2017 with the Netherlands. Did they win the Euros? They
Yeah,
did on
she
home nation.
won the
Got
Euros. Yeah.
got to the World Cup final in 2019, lost to
Mm-hmm.
USA. Obviously won the Euros with us last year. Now in another World Cup final, 4 consecutive major international tournaments. She's got to at least the final with 2 different nations. That is one of the most remarkable feats for a football manager I've ever seen. And of course, over the last 24 hours, almost reluctant to mention it, but her name is being mentioned as potential future manager of the men's team.
Mm-hmm.
Can you foresee that?
I'm I'm a little bit unsure how to feel about women managing in the men's game at the moment because I think, like I said, with Phil Neville getting the women's job, male and managing a man and managing a woman is a completely different situation in terms of emotions and everything that comes with it. Emma Hayes did a really interesting speech at a FIFA press conference or news, some kind of speech earlier today. And she spoke about how when they get male coaches come in at Chelsea, they don't get any contact time with the players for 6 weeks. And they spend 6 weeks learning about the female body in football, the impacts that has, and, how to manage women. And I think, yes, female managers should be given the opportunity. And I think we don't know until we've done it. But the England manager job, the pressure and the scrutiny, the abuse you get, you see it from Gareth Southgate, even when he's doing well, people are questioning him. I think to get that England men's job would be, I think she'd need to manage in, the men's game before she then took that high level. And I think I'm almost begrudged to, I think that there's too much at the moment. There's too much of a comparison between the men and the women's game on both sides. So when Chloe Kelly scored that penalty, there were big news stories about how it was the fastest goal, not just in the World Cup, but it was faster than any Premier League goal last season. And I think that's quite dangerous because as soon as you start comparing women's football stats because it's helps your narrative that women's football is good, it just kind of backs up when there are obviously going to be lots of figures where men's football has been faster or quicker or whatever. So I don't think I mean, the FA have come out and said that as a positive, as a compliment to Sarina.
Yeah, I think so.
And
but obviously, you know what
she's
the headline has been off the back of that, right? Is what we're now
yeah,
discussing.
yeah. And I think I don't know why you need to suggest that she's is going to manage the England men's team. Just let her let what she's done in the women's team be celebrated as it should be, and don't put that unnecessary pressure on her. And don't give people the chance to criticise when there's nothing to criticise, because she's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I was reluctant to even ask that question, but I felt it certainly needed coverage because it's been in the media over the last 24 hours or so. Good luck to Sarina and the ladies on Sunday. I think it's coming home. Lauren, anything you want to promote before you go? And thank you again so much for your contributions on this podcast and obviously in the preview podcast we did as well.
It's been a pleasure. I'd just say if you are going to watch the game on Sunday, try and get out somewhere. Try not to watch it at home if you can, because I think there's been a bit of coverage over the last 24 hours as to how few kind of big events there are. If you think about what would be going on before a men's World Cup final, how many big events there would be. I think if you can watch it with a group of friends in a pub, show the support that women's football deserves. And if you've got any young boys and girls in your lives, children, nieces, nephews, whatever, that what the Lionesses are doing, even if they don't win, they're going to be great role models for the future. And I think the more you can push that, it's all about changing perceptions. The more we can do that as adults, hopefully as generations come through, women's football will get even more support and resources. So come on, England.
Well said. Are you advising everyone to go and get drunk though in the morning?
Well, you don't have to drink alcohol. Just
God, could you imagine the state of this country if the men were playing in the World Cup final at 11 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, that doesn't need bearing. Whereas if the ladies win, it will just be like a positive sweep of emotion throughout the day. I think it will be absolutely great. I'm intending to watch it with my mum and dad. I think is the plan that's in the agenda. But I did as well. To be honest, it was the first thing I thought on Wednesday was, oh, should I go out somewhere? Which I think in itself is nice. Is like for me now, I'm like, this is a real event. This is a big deal. I feel something like I want to go out. The wife said to me, she said, well, what's your plan Sunday? I said, if I have to miss the Premier League games, that's fine. I said, I'm not missing the girls at 11 o'clock. No way at all. Catch up with the men later. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Lauren, thank you so much. Deadline stream today, 5:15 p.m. UK time, 6:15 deadline. By the way, it's 15 minutes earlier than last week, so don't get caught out. Other than that, Suj will be back with me on Monday for the game week 2 review. Just leaves me to say thank you again so much to Lauren. Come on, the Lionesses. Cue music, please, man child.